neighbors, this video is part of the 5 Under 5 playlist for the month of May. Our host is Emily from Farm Charm Chic, and thank you, Emily, for allowing me to be your guest host. Our channel links and a link to the playlist will be in my description box below. Since the only theme was to use wood, I chose Decor for my secondary theme, and I hope you enjoy what I put together. And sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the video. Project number 1, bee magnets. This project literally is pennies to make. Everyone has tumbling tower blocks laying around, random wood beads, and that's really all you need. So I already painted the blocks in yellow. That's going to be the bee body. And then I have the wood beads. That will be the bee heads. And I painted those in black. Just black acrylic paint. And the same with the bee bodies. That's just yellow acrylic paint. I put them on a skewer, and I have a piece of parchment paper underneath. And then when it was done, I sort of balanced it on a couple of paint bottles to dry. Then I have my Funsel black acrylic marker, and I'm using that to do the beads. I was going to paint them, but I have the Funsel marker, and I've actually done a bunch of reviews for Funsel products. This one came out of a container of all black acrylic paint markers. So I had to select a super thick one all the way down to a super thin. I think this one is like medium. But I recommend their products if you're interested. I'm just going to use some hot glue, a little bit in the middle of the bead and a little bit on the outside edge. And the glue in the middle of the bead, sort of like when it's still warm, it'll drip down and it just creates a good hold. And then you'll see I do 4, and then I can't find the bee head for the 5th bee body, and I do not feel like stopping what I'm doing and looking for it, so I just go forward, and now we're making 4 bees instead of 5. I have a bunch of boxes of paper clips, and I'm going to use those for the bee antenna. And you can use like any kind of wire, or I don't know, maybe skewers. Just, use what you have laying around. I unfolded the paper clip and trimmed it with my wire trimmers. And then I have these jewelry pliers that are rounded, and I used those to make round ends on the tip of the antennas. I really like how they look. I really like how they turned out. But I do come back with a sponge dabber with black paint on it because I didn't want to keep it silver. Now, my inspiration, you may have seen, it was a bee magnet that I made like a year ago using half beads and some narrow ribbon for 2 sets of wings on the bee. But I'm going to do just 1 set of wings because I'm using the wider ribbon. This burlap ribbon with the black polka dots I've had like for years and years and years, and just a little bit back left over, and oh my gosh, look how cute. So use different ribbon on the remaining ones, and then I'm going to use this buffalo check on the last 2. One is going to be the magnet, and one's going to be the pick for the yellow bee bouquet, and that's the next project. So I'm going to get those wings on there, and you can use twine like I did with the previous ones, or I found this black, narrow black ribbon, and I used that to cinch in the middle, and then just flip it over, hot glue on the back, and then press it down. And oh my gosh, they came out so good. I really, really like them. I'm going to make the pick here, just putting down a strip of hot glue and putting down the skewer, and I'll come back with the marker and put some black lines on the skewer so it's not as noticeable. And oh my gosh, I'm just going to put some magnets on the back here, and I'll give you a good look at them during the final reveal. Project number 2 I call Yellow Bee Bouquet. I'm using a Dollar Tree crate, some Dollar Tree florals. I'm pretty sure they're all from Dollar Tree. Just picked through the florals I had in my stash and just grabbed anything that was yellow. I know some of them are carnations, but I'm not even sure what the other ones are. I am applying Mod Podge to the whole crate except for the inside and bottom. I end up not decoupaging anything on the ends, just the sides, but I went ahead and did the Mod Podge, just in case. Now I'm separating the 2 plies. This napkin is 2 plies. And just very carefully grab it on the corner and then pull it apart. A lot of people like to paint the surface where they're going to apply the napkin. They like to paint it white. I decided I didn't really need to paint it white. Maybe it would have popped more. But the wood is so blonde that, I didn't really think I needed to. I believe that's a personal preference, though. So we have 4 bees on one napkin. So I tore off one bee and kind of centered it. It's too short for the side, so I'm going to use pieces of what's left of the napkin to fill it in. Just using my Hippo heat press and some parchment paper. Just going over it a bunch of times. And then I'll just tear off the top and bottom. And I do come back in with some sandpaper. Sort of even it off. But, you don't have to use a knife or a pair of scissors or anything. Just give it a little tear. This is the end of a paintbrush. I didn't want to cut the napkin so much as just press it into the groove there. And that worked. I liked how that turned out. I have a fan brush that I'm going to use to distress right after I get these little strips of napkin on either side. And I just tried to pick parts that had a design that sort of blended in well. It wasn't super noticeable. And I'll do the same on both sides. I didn't want any bare wood. I wanted it all to be covered. And again, using my Hippo heat press and parchment paper. A lot of people describe it as reactivating the Mod Podge. I don't know if it's a reactivation, but I like to think the napkin becomes one with the wood. And then I'll just tear off the remainder of the napkin here. And I think it came out pretty good. Coming in with my sandpaper to even things out. And again, I'll do that on both sides. Now, I think I over-distressed this because this actually looks pretty good. I should have just stuck with the edges. But I dragged the fan brush all the way across and got maybe a little heavy-handed. Obviously, if you're recreating something, you don't have to distress it at all. It's personal preference. I like sort of defining the edges, so top, bottom, side. So if I were to do it again, I probably wouldn't do much distressing in the middle. I grabbed all those flowers. I put 3 yellow carnations in the middle, and then I just went from there. Whatever I put on one side, I put on the other side. And I popped in some lavender there too, just because I have it. And then there's my little bee pick that I just made. I wanted that a little bit higher than the flowers. And I will give you a good look at this during the final reveal. Project number 3, I call a calendar bee on a cupboard door. Basically, it's going to create a frame and make it look really high-end. I did take the little knob off and just filled it up with some spackle, and then applied just a 1 coat of Mod Podge in the middle. I don't do it on the frame part. Actually wipe off any Mod Podge that did get on the frame part, because I don't want any part of the paper sticking to the frame. Now this, as far as recreating goes, this is probably the most expensive project in this video. The cupboard door was $4 at the Habitat for Humanity Restore. And then I had the calendar in my stash, but I did the math. If you only use the large images, it comes out to like 13 cents an image. So, I mean, technically, this project cost $4.13 to make. Probably even less, because if you use the back, then, you know, it's even less. But what I did, it's a 12 by 12 image, and it doesn't quite fit in the middle, so I just pressed it in with my fingers and then cut the creases. And then I'm going to get that parchment paper on top and use my heat press like I have in the previous project. And I just, you know, take my time. It is a large image, so you want to make sure you get like the whole thing. You just want to go over the middle, the edges, the corners as best you can. And I thought I did a pretty good job, but you'll see towards the end there actually is a raised bubble, and I'll show you how I deal with that. So anytime I put an image in a frame, I like to put down some rope. I feel like it just gives it a cleaner look. And I couldn't find the thicker rope, like the nautical rope, so I'm using this rope. I'm not even sure where I got it. But any rope, you know, medium size, if you're going to recreate something like this, you know, just use rope of your choice. And I actually used 2 different kinds of glue. I used my hot glue and also the Aliens Tacky glue. I kind of like that because I've noticed that after a couple of years, stuff that's been put together with hot glue tends to start falling apart. And I do store a lot of my stuff in the garage, which can get really hot. So that might be part of the reason, but if I can use 2 different kinds of glue, I will. I just feel like you're going to get a better hold. And then what I try and do is when I get to the corners, I'll use just the hot glue, and I can use my finger to push it right into that corner like so. I just like that if it's not like too rounded. And I think it would have a rounder look if I was just using the tacky glue. That's why I used the hot glue in the corners. And I just go all the way around to the very end, and I just had to trim it just a little bit. And the goal is to try and make it look like you don't know where it began and ended. Now, the hole where I took the knob from was super visible, and I didn't want to paint the wood because I like the wood. So I just used these little bees that I've been using, and then I added some to the top corner as well. Here's what it looks like. And then I'm showing you, you see that little wrinkle, that little bubble there? I take a needle and I poke it in parts of the design where it wouldn't be noticeable, and I did it twice. And then I went back over it with my heat press on the parchment paper, and I'll show you that it disappears. So that's sort of a neat trick, and I'll give you a better look at this whole thing in the final reveal. Project number 4, Bee on Distressed Wood. We're using some Mod Podge. Not sure if I used the little beads. And then this palette plank that I got from Walmart for $2.87. Then, of course, the calendar image is pennies. So another very inexpensive project. I used the front of the calendar because the image inside the calendar had like the honey and for sale, and I thought maybe I would want that at some point, so I used the front because it just said farmer's market. And I just kind of trimmed it to the shape of the plank, and then I used my heavy duty square ruler or L-shaped ruler. And the point in ripping like this was to get the paper just a little bit smaller than what I was putting it down on. So a little bit smaller than the plank, because I actually wanted parts of the plank to show because I liked the distressed look of it. And the bee is sort of on a distressed background, so it actually comes out looking pretty cool, if I do say so myself. I used the scissors there just to start the rip, but you can just rip the whole thing and then sand it after you put it down. I wanted to rip it before I put it down because I wasn't sure I'd be able to sand it the way I was putting it on there, because it wasn't all the way to the edge. And I'm just going to fix the tears, make it a little more even. And of course, using my trusty Mod Podge. I just get the small ones at Dollar Tree. They only had one matte, a bottle. The rest were glossy. So I think I'm using the matte on this one. And of course, put down too much so you'll see me paint and then squeeze some back into the bottle. Just don't really want too much. Again, just a few minutes for it to dry under my ceiling fan. And then I try and center it best I can, put down my parchment paper, and then go over it with my Hippo heat press. I'm working from the middle to the edge, and voila! It looks so good. I love how the edges are showing. I decided I hadn't done a swag yet, so I decided to make a swag for this one. And I thought it looked good with the greenery that was on the image to start with. So I just pulled apart some flowers and made 2 little bouquets on either side. And that sort of comes out looking like a swag, even though there's a big empty space in the middle. And I'm going to wrap some twine around each part. I left the space in the middle because I wasn't sure how big my bow was going to be. I didn't really want to glue the bow to the greenery, so I left a space in between the 2 floral picks because I wanted to be able to hot glue the bow to the actual wood part. So again, just scrunching a piece of ribbon into the awareness shape and cinching it in the middle and wrapping it with some twine. And then I'll tie a knot in the back and sort of poof out the bow. Get it glued down to that space in the middle. I put one of those little bees in the middle. But just the twine looks good. I just decided to put a bee because I have them. I'm just going to put down some glue on the back of the bow. Then press it into the middle, and that space that I left was a perfect amount of space. I'm going to cut the tails super short because I want to be able to see the whole image of the bee. And I do them on an angle instead of dovetail, because that way I can do them shorter. And I really like how it looks with the florals on top, and a better look in the final reveal. Project number 5, Floral Beehive. So the 5th and final project uses this beehive shape that I got at Dollar Tree, and the square I think was in a package from Amazon, so I'm not sure exactly how much, but probably less than $1 for that. I'm using the foam paintbrush to cover it with black, and then I decided it was a little too dark, and I liked how some of the wood was showing in parts, so I tried to wipe off the extra paint before it dried and soaked in. My trusty Mod Podge. Again, this is going to involve decoupaging, so I make sure to get every little nook and cranny with the Mod Podge. Now, this wasn't the easiest thing to decoupage because of those raised V shapes. But I really liked this floral napkin. Again, I got it from Napkin World on eBay. And it actually has 3 plies. But I noticed the top ply was thicker. So I'm like, there has to be a third ply there. And there was. Just carefully pulled them apart. Then I didn't want to center it because I wanted to see a whole floral on the bottom part of the beehive. So I actually pulled it to one side. And then just went over everything. I tried to get up against the bee shapes and then do the tops of the bee shapes separately. It was a little challenging, but I wasn't looking for perfect here. The design is going to help mask any little mistakes or rips or tears or anything, which is what I like. And one thing I like about busy designs, I'm using the burn method. It just literally burns out when there's no more. When it literally burns out when you hit the Mod Podge. And see, it worked really good for the middle, but it didn't work that great for the insides. I poked them with a scissor and then tried doing the flame right in the middle, but it wasn't working that great. And I don't really like this this lighter. I had a Dollar Tree a candle lighter that actually worked really well. I think maybe this the flame is too large on this one. I'm not sure, but anyway you can do it. It's neat to try. If you're not comfortable doing it inside, you can do it out on your porch or whatever. But the flame basically stops when there's no more loose napkin for it to get to. I'm using that Funsel acrylic marker again just to define the edges of the bee shape. And again, just sort of tearing off little bits of a napkin to make it look a little cleaner. And then doing the same to both bee shapes. I just kind of used my finger to press the napkin down on the edge of the bee shapes there. And, it actually just the warmth of my hand sort of pressing that napkin down was enough to make it stay. Now we're just going to glue the hive to the backing here. I'm using some Aliens tacky glue. And then I'll do the hot glue every other strip there. I'm just going to bring it closer to the bottom, and I love how the black shows through the little opening in the hive there. I'm going to create a hanger with just some Dollar Tree twine. I make a little knot and hot glue it, and then I like to put like a little piece of ribbon on top just for added stability. And that's pretty much it for this one. Super easy, looks fantastic, and I'll give you a good look at it during the final reveal.